getting on to the number two option, I think there's two Nick guys that can possibly be in that conversation, and that's IQ and RJ. Um, in my opinion, I think it's more likely that IQ becomes the number two option than RJ at this point. I'm personally very high on IQ. I think he has all-star potential. He has elite range as a shooter. He's shown tremendous growth as a playmaker. He's getting in the paint more, taking fewer floaters, more mid-range shots, and he's a very smart defender, and he's becoming a very good defender at the point of attack. I think like an idealized version of IQ is one that's able to leverage his like shooting gravity into easy offense for himself and others. I'd love to see him get more reps as the primary ball handler to get like a real more of a feel as to like what his ceiling actually can be. It's kind of tough because he's always either on the court with like Julius, who's like almost always the primary ball handler on the court, or he's on there with Burks and Rose, and they get a lot of the reps as well. But I think we're starting to see him not only like pick apart defenses, but he's starting to like manipulate them more, which I think is something that you want from a guy who can possibly be a number two option. Um, I think IQ right now, out of all the younger Knicks, I think he has the highest ceiling of the Knicks young core, and I think there's a good chance that he reaches it. Obviously, I mentioned before I am pretty high on him. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I'm with you. So, but I'm gonna zoom out for a sec because I wanted to.
Okay.
I went through like the last five title teams, and I looked at all the teams that. Last year I looked at all the teams that could have won the title. The years before that, I just looked at the teams that actually made the championship, and I was like, all right, who are the second best guys on all these teams? So 2020, kind of a unique year, right? Because Giannis just, I mean, to your point, like you have number ones like the Suns did last year, where it was either Chris Paul or Devin Booker, and then the other guy was
Yeah.
like sort of a 1A 1B, which means your number one doesn't have to be quite as good. While the Bucks had like a much cleaner pecking order, right? It was obviously Giannis, and that means your number two could be Chris Middleton. I was looking at that and I was like, well, Julius Randle could sort of be Chris Middleton, but we'll circle back to that. The other teams that
Mhm.
could have won if there weren't injuries, James Harden was the number two on the Nets, Paul George the number two on the Clippers. So that's a high bar. The Knicks don't have anyone that good. 2019, the number one guy or the number two guy was Anthony Davis. The Knicks don't have anyone like Anthony Davis. I'm not even going to go over the Heat because I don't think they really had a shot that year. 2018, the number two guy, Kyle Lowry. Again, Randall, maybe just like a notch below that. The number two guy in the Warriors was either Steph Curry or Kevin Durant. And then you can go back the last 3 years. It was Steph Curry or Kevin Durant. And for the Cavs, it was Kyrie Irving. So I look at that as the benchmark and I say, it's pretty unlikely that the Knicks have that dude on their roster. But that's not the
Yeah.
question. The question is who is most likely on the Knicks roster. So I want to next segment I want to circle back and have a Julius Randle conversation for a second. But Ariel, I'm in agreement with you that Immanuel Quickley is that guy out of the younger players. Just because he made really significant improvements this year. And I think an underrated aspect of all this is quite literally the best part of his game last year, outside of obviously the pull-up three-point shooting, was his foul baiting, right? His ability to manipulate
Yeah.
defenses and get to the line. And because of the changes in the rules, that part of his game has almost entirely gotten wiped out, right? Like every once in a while, like at the end of the Spurs game, you saw him let like a defender just ran into him because he took a hard stop. Like he still has that craft, but he just can't go to it as much because like the Trae Young BS does not fly in the NBA anymore. And despite that, like there's an argument that like, all right, he could have taken a step back because of that, but he's made a pretty significant leap, right? Last
Mhm.
season, he was in the 10th percentile in the entire NBA, according to Cleaning the Glass, as a 2 point range scorer in terms of his field goal percentage. This year, all the way up to the 45th percentile, and we've noted it, right? The ability to, instead of relying solely on floaters, to get all the way to the rim and developing like an Ariel, you know this better than anyone else because you're pinning these plays every single night, like a little bit of a mid range game. Like had that dirty little turnaround over Doug McDermott the other night, and every
Yeah.
game I'm getting more and more excited because we're seeing like something new in his bag. And this is a guy a year ago we were sort of questioning, well, is his release fast enough? Like, is he ever going to have a mid range game? But he has so much craft and so much touch that he can get there. But I'm with you. Like the thing to focus on is the deep shooting and how can he leverage that to create for others. And it's like it's sort of the Steph Curry effect. If you can hit from 30 feet and you're quick as anyone in the world, no pun intended, you are going to be able to create a whole lot of points. But I think what I want to throw back to you here is how do you see him doing that against starters? Because to me, like as he's gotten more time, like I don't want to say like exposed is far too strong of a term, but it's clear like it's a little bit more difficult, which inevitably it was going to be. But against bench guys, it looked easy. And like for me, I was sort of like salivating, like, wow, like how good is this guy today? And then against starters, there's clearly an adjustment period. But with a young guy, that's not a cause for concern, but it is interesting in terms of his evaluation.
Yeah, I think it's just like I mentioned earlier, you just need to see more reps with it. it's a higher level of competition than it is against bench lineups. And with the bench lineups, he also does have the cushion of like he's also out there with other playmakers. Which in the starting lineup, he's out there with Julius if he is playing with the starters for the most part. But there's not that level of like, okay, I can dish the ball off and there's other playmakers. RJ does it in spurts. Fournier we thought would, but he hasn't done much of it this season. So just overall, I think you want to see more reps from him, see if he's able to show what he's doing against the bench. I'm confident that he can as time goes on. You know, it's easy to forget it's only his second year because he plays so much like a veteran. But yeah, the one thing that I do like about IQ, which I think the starting lineup in general would benefit from, is kind of his like frantic, frenetic pace that he plays with. He's always just running up the court, and he generates a lot of early, easy offense, which I think we can all agree that sometimes the Knicks offense bogs down and it's like end of the shot clock. Here's this like tough fadeaway or you know pull up jumper. So I think there's a lot of like smaller good qualities about IQ that bring out the best in the Knicks in general. And him getting more reps, I think, benefits not only him and his development long term, but I think it would actually help the Knicks win more games now too.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I mean, that's kind of what I was excited about what Randall was doing the last few games, where he was bringing the ball up a little bit faster and like creating stuff because we focus on the transition with this Knicks team, and maybe not enough of like the lack of pace in the half court. But we can continue that conversation. We're going to take a quick break. All right, we are back on Locked On Knicks. Gavin Schall, Ariel Pacheco. I want to wrap up this Immanuel Quickley conversation by I guess the only way to frame this is like what does it look like if he's the second best guy on a championship team, right? Because he's like, obviously I don't want to say obviously he's never going to be Steph, but it's literally like 1 in a million that he's going to be Steph because Steph is like I don't think we're ever going to see Steph again, but that is the mold. So what does like a muted version of Steph Curry look like? And to me, that's what I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of Immanuel Quickley, second banana to when the Knicks somehow find their Giannis.
Yeah, you're kind of expecting like kind of a Walmart Steph Curry
Yeah.
in a sense, like you're saying. Um, I don't know. I think it's something. I don't know if you want to kind of compare it to kind of like how Darius Garland's kind of playing right now. So
Oh,
sort of
interesting.
similar in that kind of mold in a sense. Not exactly like it's not a perfect comp, but that kind of sense. Someone who's able to leverage his shooting and play with the floater, kind of have that lob threat as a big. So then not now the opposing defending big has to decide: do I contest the floater? Do I go for the lob? It's he's just going to be able to leverage that shooting gravity into a lot of pressure onto the defense. If you watch even Damian Lillard, who does it really well as well, leveraging that shooting gravity. There are few players that actually can pull from that deep and can be efficient at it. And for IQ to show that at such a young age is a huge positive. The idealized version of him is someone that I think you want in a primary ball handler. The thing with him will be, can he get to the rim more? Can he finish over bigger defenders? Kind of needs to strength uh, muscle up a little bit more, but it'll be fun to see him get there. And I'm very high on him, and I think he can get there. It's probably less than like a 20% chance he ever becomes. Probably less than like 10% chance he ever
Yeah.
becomes an actual second option on a championship team. But I think right now I feel pretty confident saying that he's the next best shot out of the younger dudes to hit that level.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think to me the key is like he has to make another leap as a shooter because right now he's like a
Yeah,
35% 3-point shooter on like a high degree of difficulty diet of shots, right? Like on a different team in a different context, he's a 40% 3-point shooter,
yeah,
no
that matters
questions asked.
a lot.
But
Yeah.
he needs to become a 40% 3-point shooter on that high degree of difficulty diet of shots. And like I think at that point you're talking about someone who I mean because that's sort of the whole thing with Steph, right? He incites fear. Like when he crosses half court, defenses are panicking in ways that they've never panicked about anyone in NBA history. And IQ, he is elements of that. Like when he was in summer league, like I think we saw a little bit of that where he would
Yeah.
jab and you would see like someone basically like concuss themselves, like going and twist to try and keep up with him. And he was torching guys because they were right up on him 30 feet away from the basket. And that's again, that's the whole magic of Steph Curry is like you just can't stop someone that fast if you're going to play them that far out.
Mhm.
And I think Quickly has to become not a Steph shooter, but just a notch below that to be that kind of guy.